Alright, so this is how to wire the harness. So what I have here is just a piece of paper on the ground, or on the table to protect my table. And this is just a note card I'm going to use to go like that and protect the wires from soldering other wires. Now what I did was take two wires, you spread them open a little bit, and you twist them together, like so. Now you can go ahead and use a crimp connectors, or you can use heat shrink. But the reason I don't use crimp connectors is because I find that actually the reason I don't use crimp connectors and heat shrink is because I find them to be both to be pretty loose for this small gauge of wire. If you have wire that's bigger gauge, it work great. But for wire that this gauge, it's not the best. So I just have a soldering gun, a good quality soldering gun. I was going to use my small soldering pen, but I found it better to use big soldering gun. Here's my little soldering pen. But here's the big boy. So they try to match up the wires so they the color to color, and for the most part, actually, in this application, they are all exactly right. But I make sure I like triple check. So I just wrote down what's in the book for my head unit, and then this is the wiring harness key, and it tells you what they all go to, and they all do line up. So, and then I do know that on the Silverado that there's one plug that just has four wires, and it's just the back speakers, negative and positive. So they do seem to be right. I'm just praying I don't get to my truck and then this doesn't line up. So that would probably piss me off. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and start doing wire to wire. Alright, so I'm just gonna take these two wires, purple to purple, solder them. Better safe than sorry. I use quite a bit of solder. So once you put on a little bit of your soldering paste, you got it soldered up, let it cool for a little bit, and then I'm going to put some Scotch electrical tape over it. I've been to Walmart and I've gotten cheap electrical tape, and I vowed never to use electric tape again. And then I got some Scotch, and I love it again. It works just as good as I remember. So make sure you don't buy cheap brands if you're using electrical tape. If you can find some heat shrink small enough, go ahead and do it. I heat shrink this connection off because I don't need it. It's for a mute. So that works pretty good, but I had to fold it in half, and it doesn't work good if you're just connecting two wires. So I'm going to go ahead and tape it up, and then zip tie them all together. Right now I only got one done, so I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them. Alright, so I went ahead and soldered all these together, used some flux, used some solder, put them together, then I taped them up in the middle. Now I used a lot of tape because I know this doesn't look as beautiful as like heat shrink does, but I really don't want any metal touching. I've left a few unsoldered that I need to complete so I can I need to wait for my micro bypass to come in the mail so I can solder them all together because I don't want to use alligator clips. I want to put them together at the middle and tape them up like that, and I'll probably run the micro bypass towards the unit, towards that way. So anyways, my stock harness has two. Oh, by the way, because I didn't get a Metra kit, I got an American International. These seemed a little flimsy over here, so I just added some extra tape just to be 100% sure that no metal would touch, nothing would come undone. I'm not going to get water behind my radio, but just in case, I mean, they're good. So, this harness is done. All four of these are just for my rear speakers. So I'm going to go ahead and zip tie these. Now I'm only going to do four. One here, and one here, and one over here. Maybe I'll even do three, I don't know. But just so they're not tangled, they're not getting in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now this harness is done. I'm just going to go ahead and click these off really quick. Now the reason I use these rather than tape to put the harnesses together is it looks cleaner, and it's also easier to get off in the future rather than unwrapping a bunch of tape. You can just take a knife and cut off these little clips. And I used these really tiny ones. I actually got these with my amp. I'm using bigger ones for the amp. I just use these really tiny ones because they're small and they don't look bad. And I also use this to kind of seal the end of the tape. I'll do the same thing over here. Got one right here, got one right here. So I only put 3 on this side, but so I'm just gonna wait for my micro bypass to come in, and then I'll wire all these up. This will be a solid harness too. So one side looks really good. I'm just waiting to finish this up. So now that we just got my micro bypass in the mail, this is what it is. Now you can do a switch or a relay, but I'm just gonna go ahead and for 17 bucks, never have to deal with it. Wire it in behind the radio, and it'll always just work. So that'll be great. So reading the installation instructions here, you got the black goes to ground, blue goes to amp, and your green goes to your light green parking brake wire. The blue wire goes to the amp remote turn on, just so you know. So we're going to go ahead and strip this blue end, tie it in with this blue end, this blue one, and my amp turn on wire. So we're going to solder all those together, and solder the yellows together, solder the grounds together, and then in this case, because this is supposed to be connected to the parking brake, they give you a 6-foot wire for installing this, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it short with the rest of the wires so it's not, you know, tying up my harness. But there's the parking brake wire. So we're just going to go ahead and snip it right here, strip it, and solder these up. Alright, so I got my soldering gun wired up, or heating up. Got this wired up. So I'm just gonna double check to make sure everything is right. You got the black from the, this is the black from the head unit, the ground, and it is all 3 of the wires, the one from the radio harness, the one from the micro bypass, and the one from the radio, or the, radio harness. The blue wire, we have coming from here, tapped into here, and then as it goes to the radio, its signal is interrupted by the micro bypass over here. And the green wire is going straight from the micro bypass to the parking brake wire of the harness, and we're going to solder that. And after this, I have to solder a extension onto the 12 volt, and I have to figure out what this yellow goes to, what I'm doing with this yellow wire. So as you can see, all of our connections are soldered. So now I'm just going to tape them up so they don't, so none of them touch. You can't let any of them touch. And then we'll tape them all up so, like that, so they're one big harness. Alright, so here I got the radio and its faceplate. Flip it over to the back. That's where the connections go in. Here's the finished harness. I got this one really simple for a few speakers. Right there. Coming out to the one side. This one is a little bit more complicated, so that's why I had to clean it up with all this tape. I don't like using all the tape, but it looked like a mess without it, so we had wires everywhere. So you got all those connections are working. The micro bypass is tapped in and sticking out just in case I need to replace it or service it. I can do so. The remote wire also goes, obviously to the to the micro bypass, but it's also right here, so I can run this all the way back to my amp. I got the terminal on there, so I can put it in my amp. I'm gonna solder this connection really quick for my this is 50 feet of wire. I'm not gonna need all 50, but I don't want to cut it yet because I don't know how far I'm gonna have to go. Same with this one. This one won't be nearly as far, just from the head unit to the passenger seat. But this is gonna have to go from the engine bay all the way into the harness because that's the only place I can get a key ignition power. So now obviously we didn't modify this at all, so this should have no problem plugging in. But just to be sure, plug this in like so. And now it's plugged in. This will be ran wherever it has to be ran. This has to go into my Silverado harness. This goes into my Silverado harness. This just hangs here, and this goes to my remote turn on. This I'll have to run to my parking brake, so that's going to kind of be a pain, but I'll deal with it. And then this I'm going to have to run to my ignition. So, got the wiring harness all set up. Now I just got to plug and play. Alright, so just a few last minute updates. This one is wired up as normal. This one is wired up. This is the 12 volt switched lead, so I can run this to my engine bay. This one is my reverse camera. I'm probably going to have to put more wire on. I'm really hoping I won't. I might not. It's going to cut it close. Actually, I probably won't, to be honest with you. This is about 30 feet for my reverse lead, and this is about 20 feet for my switched engine lead. And then my remote, and my micro bypass. So, there's the radio that I put in the shroud and attached correctly now, so it's even, and it's screwed in to the sides. I also, there's 2 screws on each side. I also used some tape to keep it on there, and I know that's not going to help much, but I really stretch it so it's almost like a toe strap. No, that's a stupid example, but and then just to be sure, I did poke the holes in there to breathe, but I don't think 1 strip, 2 strips will make that much of a difference. So this thing's all ready to go, ready to be plugged in, ready to be wired up.